Hello, everybody. Welcome to the fourth episode of the Untold with Azi. I am your host, Azi. Welcome to my podcast for the second time. We had a little accident. Somebody tripped over all the cables and all the lights went off. So we had to re-record this from the beginning. So we'll try to keep it more interesting. Today, I do have a very special guest on my podcast. I'm just gonna dive into it. Amir, welcome to my podcast. How are you doing?
Hello, thank you very much. I'm very happy to be on your podcast.
Of course, thanks for
I'm
coming.
doing well. How are you doing?
I'm doing pretty well. So, did you end up watching the previous episode that I recorded?
I I watched a portion of
A
it.
portion of it?
A portion
Okay.
of it that was about the previous guest who did not. The guest for last
Yes.
week who did not show up.
Yes. How disappointing that one
It was for
was.
sure very
Do you think that
disappointing.
was a valid reason?
I'm sure they had very valid
Do you think
reason.
they really had COVID?
I'm sure they had COVID.
Okay. How
Yeah.
are you so sure?
Because that was me. I was supposed to come in last week Friday,
Yes.
and on Thursday
Mm-hmm.
I messaged you
You did.
at
Okay, so
night.
thanks for reminding everyone. It is confirmed it was Thursday, a day before. Yes, fact
On
check.
on Thursday I messaged you and I was like, I have COVID, and
Yeah.
I had the test right in front of me.
Okay.
And I was very apologetic, I remember.
I mean, this is a
It
thing.
was very
I would
disappointing
have
for me
loved
as
to
well because
have
I was
you.
very excited to be on your
Oh
podcast.
yeah, definitely. No, I would have loved to have you, and it was just disappointing because I wanted you to be on the podcast sooner rather than later.
You are
But
very
I'm
kind.
happy that you're feeling better and you're okay.
I'm doing very good. Yeah, thank
Good,
you.
good. So I kind of know, like, we've all been hanging out, and I kind of know that as humble as you are,
You are
as
again very
humble,
kind,
as
I should
humble
say.
as humble as you are, I know you're quite passionate about bikes,
And also other things,
and
just not
also
just, yeah.
yes, and
A
also
very
other things.
multi-dimensional
I
character.
I bet. You are, yeah. I mean, I haven't discovered the other dimensions yet. No, I'm just
You're
kidding.
about to.
I'm about to, I think. But I know you really like bikes, and I just kind of wanted to see like what's the story behind that. I know like you have your own. Your bike is pretty cool. Like it folds
Thank
in
you.
all
Yes.
sorts of ways. Like I don't know how that works, but you know. So tell me, like, how did you end up falling in love with bikes, and why bikes?
Yeah. I mean, my field of work is in transportation,
Okay.
and transportation is all about getting around, getting from point A to point B.
Mm-hmm.
And then you have modes of transportation, which
Okay.
are practically how you get around, how you go
Yes.
from point A to point B. And you
Yes.
have different modes of transportation. You have walking,
Mm-hmm.
which is the most fundamental one.
Mm-hmm.
And then you have driving, which is the
Yes.
most popular one right now, or
Yeah.
maybe like in the past few decades.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's transit, there is airplanes,
Airplanes, yeah.
are a mode of
Wish I
transportation.
had my own private jet, but I
Yeah,
don't.
no. The sea bus is a very fun one.
Yes,
Yeah.
that's a fun one.
And another one is, and my favorite one is
Mm-hmm.
bicycles.
Bicycles it is.
So that's how we get to bicycles.
Okay.
Yes.
So,
Very convenient,
okay.
a very sustainable, and a very efficient way of getting
Is it
around.
really convenient? Because considering Vancouver's weather, like it rains a lot and, you know, just,
Okay, so rain and snow are one of the very prevalent arguments against bicycles.
yeah.
But then there are places that get quite a lot of rain
Mm-hmm.
and quite a lot of snow.
Okay.
But since they have the infrastructure for bicycles, it's very convenient to get around with bicycles.
So,
The Nordic
infrastructure,
countries are an example.
yeah, what kind of infrastructures would allow the cyclist to get around easier in those conditions, like in those weather conditions?
So, snow is an easy one. I mean, in Vancouver, it's getting much better now,
Mm-hmm.
but bike lanes are not a priority for being plowed after snow.
Yeah.
And in a lot of the cases, the road for cars are plowed and the snow goes on top of the bike
Yeah, they
lane.
just like
So
push to the
so you have
side.
yeah, so you have basically bike lanes that are filled with a pile of snow and you can't really
Exactly. Yeah.
bike in there. So that's number
Kind
one.
of yeah,
Yeah,
inconvenient for the riders.
it's
Very.
it becomes
It's impossible.
impossible.
Yeah.
It becomes
Oh.
impossible unless you know how to bike on
Snow.
like 5 feet of snow.
Yeah, no.
Uh,
Don't want to be that person.
yeah. Who tries?
Did you
And
try? Did you
did I
try?
try? I mean, okay, yes, not on top of a lot of snow,
Yeah.
but when there is snow on the road, I have tried biking, and it is possible. It's not very easy,
Doesn't
but
it
it is
feel quite
possible.
unsafe and like shaky?
Okay, if you no, it's not shaky, but if you're comfortable with the tires that you have, they actually have studded tires for bicycles.
Studded tires.
Yes, tires that have I don't know what are studs that
Yeah,
come out
no,
of them. Yeah,
I think yeah,
yeah.
it's
Yeah,
self-explanatory.
studs that come. I don't know how to explain what studs are, but they have studs that
I guess it just creates more friction.
exactly.
Okay.
It helps you not fall down, which is the main thing for
Yeah,
being able to get somewhere with a bicycle.
great.
If you don't fall down, then you're good. Um,
So
so yeah,
what is the infrastructure in those Norway countries that
I mean,
they've
there
implemented?
is um there their priorities are set in a way that their bike lanes do get
Plowed?
plowed. And I
Oh,
mean, plowing is one thing. There's even another even better way of making the bike lanes accessible is that they compact the snow.
what does
So
that mean?
you don't really need to plow it out of the way.
Okay.
You can just press it down, make it compact,
Okay, so
compress the snow.
what if it rains a little and that becomes
I mean, if it rains, then there is another issue. But in places that there's no rain,
just mainly
in the
snow?
winter, then you have just the snow and cold weather.
Hmm.
For cold weather, you can just have like sort of oven mittens that go on top of a handlebar, and then you're good.
Yeah.
And motorcycles already have them.
Yeah, yeah, I've seen those.
Yeah, so bikes can have them too. When it's raining is another issue. Leaves can become very dangerous, and a
Leave.
lot of the time, yeah.
Oh,
In
I
fall
did
we get a
not know
lot.
that.
In
Okay.
fall we get a lot of rain,
Yeah.
and the leaves also fall down from
Yes,
trees,
yes.
and they're usually pushed to the side of the street,
Yeah, how could
and
that be
that's
dangerous?
usually it's very slippery.
Oh,
It's
okay.
very slippery when
Okay.
you're biking on top
Hmm.
of wet leaves.
Okay.
So if you clean them, then it
Yeah, I
becomes
mean,
easier to bike.
okay,
And
so
also
you bike around quite a lot. Does the city like do they have people like doing that quite often? I don't know. I haven't paid attention enough to actually see if they do clean out the bike lanes from the
I
leaves.
don't yeah, I don't think I bike quite a lot, but I mean I do bike every day,
Okay.
but for a short distance.
That is a lot.
For a short distance. I go to work sometimes when I go shopping, grocery shopping.
Oh, that's fun.
If it's not too much, I take my bike and barber barber
The
shop.
barber
I
shop.
went to the barber shop for this
So you
podcast,
do quite a
and
lot
I
of your
went
daily
to
tasks,
and yeah,
or like getting around.
almost all of my daily tasks. Yes, and
Did you go to the barber shop for this podcast?
I
Well,
did.
and it looks great.
Yeah, my barber was like, "Where are you going?" I was like, "I'm going to Ozzy's podcast." Yeah,
You're
I'm
definitely
forgiven.
100%
I'm
forgiven.
forgiven.
You should come for another one too.
Thank you. Um,
So, I wanted to ask because, I'm always really scared when there are bikers, or cyclists on the road. So which one's the right term? Is it bikers or cyclists? Just
well, okay, so this is actually like a
because I
huge
don't,
topic.
yeah, or like people
Um,
who ride bikes, like
people you want
who's
to have you
sorry.
probably want to have like person first language, where you put the person first and then the characteristics of that person
Okay.
afterwards, like a person on a bicycle. But it's not something that is used a lot in everyday conversation, so you can say
Yeah, I
cyclist
know there's been like a
or bikers.
conversation
Yeah,
where you shouldn't like attribute
yeah.
people who I guess ride bicycles as just cyclists, like it just defines them in that
Hmm.
way. So I'll just for the sake of like making it a bit shorter, I'll
No,
just
no,
use
just
this term,
no.
but
Cyclist
I want
is
to try to
very
be
yeah.
very
So what's the
inclusive.
word for the person who's riding bicycle?
A person who's riding a bicycle.
Yeah.
That I mean, no, it really depends on how you want to talk. I mean, correct is probably normative, and you have to look at like what the society wants. Or
What do you use in papers?
Mm. Papers. What do you use in
uh,
papers?
I tend to go for in scientific papers. I
Yes.
tend to go for person on a bicycle.
Person on a bicycle.
Yeah.
Okay. So I guess we can just go with the person on a
I mean,
bicycle.
there's another thing where that.
Let's try.
Okay,
Let's give it
so
a try because it's.
I mean, inclusivity is very important.
Yes, that's
and
why.
and
Yeah.
one thing in that regard is that we call the infrastructure where bikes usually are bike lanes,
Yeah.
but bikes are not the only mode of transportation that use that space. There's
Who
scooters.
else? Okay.
There's a person on a scooter. It could be a person on a wheelchair using that space.
A person in a wheelchair can use this
Yeah,
space.
yeah.
Oh,
There
okay.
is
I didn't know that.
maybe
Oh, like the electrical ones?
yes,
Okay,
yeah,
okay,
electrical
okay.
and a mobility scooter,
Okay.
person on a
Okay, yeah.
mobility scooter or a skateboard. You can have kids on skateboard or skates using that space.
Okay.
So if you want to be inclusive of everybody else, you
Yes.
don't call them bike lanes, you call them maybe mobility lanes
Mobility
or
lanes.
cycle lanes.
Okay, that's
That's
a very good
these are again,
educational
yeah, these are
moment.
again like
I did not know
conversations that are happening and like changes might
What
be.
about sidewalks?
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 Yeah.
I don't know. Sidewalks.
Is
Si-
there a right term for that? in that
Oh, like a
sense?
priority for sidewalks? I think it's mainly
I don't know. I
pedestrians,
think they're
isn't it?
just called side. I mean,
They
no.
crawl.
Okay, so there are legal definitions for pedestrians, and I believe people who use a wheelchair to get around are also considered as pedestrians.
Yes,
So there's that as
that's
well.
also, yeah. I think that's important to consider when they're
Mm-hmm.
building those streets and I don't know, whatever, like part of the street. It's important to consider all sorts of
Yeah, you want to consider
people.
everyone.
Yeah,
Make sure that
everybody.
everyone can benefit from that space.
Yeah, I think that's
the
that's what
public
that was one of the
space.
most interesting things that I saw. Like when I came to Canada, that was a really interesting thing to see that a lot of the spaces is accommodating for all sorts of individuals, which is really nice.
Yes, exactly. You're completely right. Yeah,
Makes
I had that
getting around
observation
really
as well.
easier. Yeah.
I got that observation as well. You have buses
Yeah,
that
even
are
buses.
accessible. That's
Yeah.
amazing.
Yeah, that was the first time I ever saw such a thing when I came here. I was like, okay, this is great.
Yes.
People don't actually have to feel isolated. They can get around and
Yes.
which is really nice.
Or mobility and they're being able to be mobile, being able to get around is very important
Yeah.
because that's when you have access to opportunities. That's when you have access to services.
So let's just assume that people on bike, if that's the right word to use, I think they're really maintaining a lot of those bike lanes and they're making even more bike lanes. And I've heard that at least studies have shown that they're really dangerous, like having other, I guess, modes of, oh, what was it, mobility, like having, no, I don't want to say modes of, like having those mobility lanes, whether it be scooters or cyclists or whoever, like on those lanes, just it's very dangerous, not just for them, but also for the drivers who are like driving in vehicles.
Okay, yeah.
And
I mean, you're right. You have to think about like what can be mixed in a space. Cars are fundamentally very different from bicycles.
definitely, yeah.
You have metal boxes that weigh over a ton on four wheels,
Yeah.
and you can move them with a tiny push on the gas
Yeah.
pedal.
Yeah.
I think they're actually very powerful. I mean, you have your car and you look at the speedometer and it goes up to what 240 kilometers per hour,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? So to have them share the same space with a human powered vehicle
Yeah.
or
Like,
with,
that was
with a
the right
person,
word.
yeah, with a person who is pedaling
Yeah.
and at the max they can go maybe 30 kilometers per hour, mixing two things that are
Yeah.
not very compatible.
Yeah.
There's actually research on what are factors that determine if two modes of transportation can be compatible or not. Weight is very important
Wait.
because weight in the case of a collision, weight is what determines the
Extent of
momentum,
damage, right?
right? If you could have I mean, momentum is the most important thing when
Okay.
it comes to
Oh,
crashes.
there might be people
or
who don't know what
collisions.
momentum is. Like, how would
Momentum
you define that?
is the multiplication of weight and speed.
Okay.
So if you have a bus run into you at 20 kilometers per hour, you're going to feel very different than when a bicycle
So can we
runs into you.
just like kind of assume that maybe it can be defined as like impact in a way?
I
Like
believe.
for
Okay, so
simplifying it.
this is actually interesting. I think we can maybe look up what impact means. I think it's this. It should be related to momentum somehow. Yeah,
Okay.
the
but-
impact.
Okay,
Yeah.
so we know what that
Yeah.
means. Okay.
So two things. I mean, speed is very important, and weight is also important.
Okay.
And fundamentally, cars or automobiles
Yeah.
and bicycles are very different in that regard. So if you have them share the same space, you're going to have conflict between them. You're going to
Yeah,
have.
exactly. Yeah.
So that's not safe. The safest thing
Yeah.
to do for bicycles is to have them have their own separated facility, a separated bike lane. I actually saw when I was coming here on the road, they're building a bike lane. Is that right?
Are they? They
I
might
saw
be.
I saw something. I think they're building a bike lane.
They might be. Honestly, I have not paid
Yeah.
enough attention.
So
They might be.
and that is separated from cars.
So when you say
Physically
separate,
separated.
so physically separate.
Physically separated. Maybe a concrete barrier.
Okay, so
Where
not
it
those
gives
like
you-
metal bar things they put between. the
I
two.
there's I don't I mean
Like, you
metal
know how
bars are
you know
also
Marine
okay.
Drive,
Yeah,
like how
metal bars are also okay, but plastic bars are not really.
that definitely
And paint again, paint is nothing. It's just
paint it
cars
doesn't
can
do anything.
easily go on top.
Elevated ones as well.
Elevated ones are also good because if you're driving and in your field of vision you have bikes a little higher up, it's a bit unusual for you because that's not what you usually see.
Yeah.
And it forces you to be more tentative to the road and
Pay more
make sure, pay more attention.
So, but the safest way would be having that concrete
This-
separation.
yes, the safest
from
way.
having your own
yes.
completely. So, do you think is that something possible, like at least for Vancouver, or like maybe like further down future? Just I don't know where else has it, but at least for here.
It is very much possible for Vancouver. Vancouver has its street layouts. When you look at the map of Vancouver, it's all a grid system where you have
Or like
parallel
horizontal,
lines
vertical. Okay,
and
yeah.
vertical. Yeah,
Yeah,
they're all
pretty
parallel.
much.
It's very easy to get from point A to point B. Just go straight line. And if you had a bike lane, a separated bike lane on every road, it would be golden. It would be amazing.
So, but yeah.
But why don't we have them?
So I think it comes back to the fact that the traffic congestion, not only due to construction, but also they have to in a way make the road or the lanes for the vehicles a bit smaller because they can't like demolish the houses that's there, obviously. So then they have to take away from the actual lanes.
Yeah, you're making a very good point. Yeah, you have
Like, what
limited
is the feasibility of that, really?
space. Yeah, you basically have limited space.
Yeah.
There's a lot of competition on the road.
On the road.
drivers
That's a good way to put it.
the drivers want to have their own lanes. If a lane is being taken away from them,
Yeah. They
they're
won't be
not
happy.
going to be happy. This is actually very interesting. You have to look it up. There are news clips about when bike lanes were added to Broadbridge.
Bike lanes that was
Broadbridge
no.
Broadbridge didn't have bike lanes all the time. Right? It's
Wasn't
fairly
it back
new.
in 2013 or 14?
It was a long time ago.
a long time ago. Because I know there was an accident
long is relative,
back
yeah.
in 2013
relative.
or something where they redid the entire. I think it was Broadbridge. They redid some parts. It was closed for so long, and they were redoing the bike lanes because some sort of accident happened or something. I can't remember.
I only came to Canada in 2018, so I don't know much.
So we don't have to do.
You
We have to
definitely
fact check.
Yeah,
I
you
don't
definitely know more than me. But I know a bit about when the bike lanes
Okay,
were
so tell me
added
about
to the Broad Bridge.
Okay.
And there are actually interviews of drivers driving on top of the bridge very unhappy. Like there was one of them saying that, oh, these politicians have to be
Yeah. Out of their mind.
yeah, why do you do this? There are a million cars and no bikes.
Yeah.
But that was the Broad Bridge was one of the most successful bike lanes in North America in terms of the
In
traffic,
North America. Okay.
in terms of
The
the traffic that it gets from
Mhm.
bicycles.
Okay.
So that already is a cue that maybe taking lanes away from cars doesn't contribute to traffic.
Do you think it does it by encouraging people to actually ride more bikes?
That is correct. Okay, so there are a few ways to think about it. There's this concept called induced demand, and that's something that it's a bit counterintuitive. Um, I'll try to explain it. Hopefully, I'll do a good job. We'll see.
Let's see.
If you supply something, if you supply a lot of something,
Okay.
there's always going to be demand for it.
Yeah.
And if you supply even more, there will be more demand for it.
Mm-hmm.
If you supply even more, there
Just
will be
grows bigger.
there will be more demand for it.
Well, you
And-
gotta run
and-
out
and-
of something at some point.
And driving is basically the same thing.
Okay.
And we have supplied roads everywhere
Yeah.
for cars.
Yes.
There's supply for road and for roads everywhere. And that's basically what cars are consuming. You can think of it in terms of apples as well. If you give out free apples, everyone is going to come from and get them from you.
Yeah.
And they're going to run out. And you have a long line of people wanting apples.
Yeah.
But if you supply even more apples, the line is going to get bigger
Bigger.
because you'll have more people coming in. But if you say, what if you say, I'm going to supply less apples now?
Mm-hmm. People are gonna get a little angry. If
Yeah,
not.
they're going to be a bit unhappy at first,
Yeah.
but then they'll just go get oranges.
Yeah.
Maybe. Yeah, or something
Life.
else. Yeah.
But what's the reason? Why should we do that?
Why should you do that?
Why
Well-
should we force people to change from cars to bicycles?
Okay, this is actually
I think it'll
a very good question.
Yeah, I think it'll.
You can think of it in terms of the freedom it gives you and other people to be able to get around. So for a lot of time, owning a car was perceived as
Luxury.
not luxury, having freedom,
Oh, okay.
having freedom to get somewhere,
Yes.
get everywhere actually,
Yeah.
to go everywhere, anywhere.
Yeah.
If you have a car, you can go anywhere, and if you don't have a car,
Your life
you
sucks.
can't. Yeah, you can't really.
Your life
you
sucks.
can't really go anywhere.
Yeah.
And owning a car is very expensive,
Yes.
and not a lot of people are able to own a car.
They can.
And as a society where we want everyone to have that accessibility, that mobility, that ability to be able to go somewhere, go to the
Yes.
services they need, go to the opportunities that they can get to.
Yeah.
We don't want everyone to be reliant on cars
Cars. Okay.
to do that.
Okay.
So you try to provide more things.
So we
And more
already
ways of
do
getting
have
around.
buses and what's the other one? No. So yeah, subway,
Yeah,
SkyTrains,
SkyTrain, yes.
and
Very good. Yeah, yeah.
what's the other one on the water? Oh my God, sea bus.
The sea
Sorry,
bus.
Yes, the
Yes.
sea bus. So
Yes.
why bikes then? Like why? But why do you think that was the only reason? Like demand and the supply thing, was that the only reason that you think bikes were necessary, or was it just as a way to basically do climate change?
You have
Environment.
You have to. I mean, climate change is very important.
Like
We should actually
what
talk
do you-
about
what do
climate
you-
change.
Well, yeah, I was
Very
gonna get into the Paris Agreement where they had to make some changes, but yeah, I just kind of want to do you think that's the main reason, or do you think they really cared about like people, or was it mainly like due to climate? I don't know. Like, what was the reason that they had to add the bike lanes?
I mean, climate change is generally very important and has to be taken into account for whatever decision that you're going to make at a city level or province level or country level or even worldwide
Yeah.
when you're talking about like a Paris Agreement. But there are other issues with only being able to get around with cars as well, and traffic congestion is one of it. I think I didn't
getting more
I
crazy.
didn't finish my point about induced demand.
Go ahead.
But the whole idea is that the more roads you build,
Yeah.
the more lanes you add,
Okay.
and it's not going to solve traffic congestion. You're still going to have congestion because you're increasing your supply, and just people are going to line up to get the apples.
Yes.
People are going to get out and try to get to their places
Yeah.
as fast as they can with their cars, and you have more people on the streets, and
Yeah.
that's congestion for you,
Yes.
right? So that's one thing. And cars are not the efficient way of getting around. Okay, so if you have a car, and you can actually try this out. If you're next to the street sometime, if you're on the street sometime, just look at the cars that are passing by and count the number of people in them.
Okay.
On average, if you count maybe the number of people in 100 cars, you get around 130 people. So that's an occupancy rate of 1.3.
Yeah.
So that huge car,
Yes.
that 1 ton of metal guzzling gas,
Yeah.
is just moving one person.
Yes.
And what is that one person doing? They're probably going to the grocery store to get some milk.
Maybe.
Maybe.
Yeah.
Point is, if you look at the data, because we have data on how people travel,
Yeah.
they're for example, in US, they do national household travel surveys
Yeah.
where every 5 years, they survey a great number of people, not everyone. So you sample a number of people,
Okay.
and you see what they have done on a typical day, and you know everything, and from that you can know everything from the population. You can know how many trips they usually make.
Okay.
You can know what is the purpose of their trip. You can know how long is the distance of their trip. And interesting thing is, majority of the trips are not that long, and are easy, and are easy to make on a bicycle.
Okay.
And if you provide infrastructure, people are actually going to make those trips on a bicycle. Which in Vancouver, even though it's I mean, we always talk about how Vancouver is great in terms of
they're bike friendly.
being bike friendly.
Yeah.
But I was having a conversation from a professor in Sydney, Australia, and I was surprised. I was hearing it for the first time. I was like, Vancouver is not actually that great.
Excuse me.
Yeah.
How come?
Or there was, and very recently actually, I was having a conversation from someone in Barcelona,
Yeah.
and they actually said the same thing. Like,
So-
not really.
What is the reason?
Comparatively, and when you compare to, let's say, Montreal or Barcelona or Sydney or Amsterdam, Vancouver is not that great. But not that great, they still have 8% of people biking to work, which is quite a lot.
That's actually. Yeah.
8% of people in Vancouver,
That's
they
quite
get around. They get around on a bicycle.
That's quite surprising.
Yeah. But let's get back to that question. I'm just saying that if we have the infrastructure, people
Yes.
are going to use it. But
Okay, that's good to know.
why don't we have the infrastructure? One thing
like
that you mentioned.
the proper ones.
Yeah, one thing that you mentioned is the competition for space.
Yeah.
Drivers are not going to be easy on giving up their
Space.
Their space.
Yeah.
But thinking about that induced demand problem, if you do take some space,
Eventually.
it's not going to be catastrophic. It's not like the traffic is going to get so bad that you're going backwards. Huh?
Let's hope not. Anyone's gonna go back.
No, after some time, yes, like let's say you do this, and one lane on, I don't know, Broadway in Vancouver becomes a bike lane. There's going to be a bit more traffic first, maybe in the first 7 days, but after that, it's going to reach the equilibrium of that congestion.
Does it
that we had
reach,
before.
so does it reach the equilibrium, or just the, let's just call it the rush hour time just becomes longer and people just get used to it?
There's a sweet spot that always happens regardless of how much road you make. I mean, you can go to this extreme. There's what, like a few million people in all of Metro Vancouver. You can make the roads very wide and you won't have traffic, but you're wasting a lot of, yeah, you're wasting a lot of space.
Yes, for sure.
Right? You don't want to do that. But in terms of making the decision of how to make a trip, eventually people make their decision in a way that traffic is not really going to be that bad.
That bad. Okay.
Okay. And you mentioned that we already have buses, we already
Yeah.
have C-Bus, we already
Other
have
modes of transportation.
SkyTrain.
Yes.
Do we want more? And the answer is yes, we do want more. They are more efficient. SkyTrains are more efficient
Definitely, yeah.
in moving people. Like a bus can take, what, 50 or 100 people and move them.
Yeah.
But a car on average takes 1.3.
Yes.
A lot of the time it's just one person driving.
So
Okay.
you're saying basically using other modes of transportation could eventually be better than just the vehicle on its own, in the grand scheme of things.
Eventually, when people make the decision for getting around, most of the times what's important for them is how long it's going to take them.
Yeah, and also comfort. You know, like, I feel like comfort is also...
Comfort is also important, but travel time is the most important thing.
Yes. Yes, especially when you're in a
Driving
rush.
driving is not comfortable. Driving is fun.
It is for some
Especially
Driving
for
is
the people
fun.
who are not driving, is comfortable.
It's comfortable for those who are not driving. Yeah. There are a lot of things that that you have to think about when you're driving. At least driving for me, if you're paying attention to the road, if you're reading
Not
the road,
daydreaming.
if you read, because when you're driving, you have to actually read the road.
Yes.
It's like reading a
yes.
book. If you want to drive
No.
well, you have to read the signs. You have to read other people, what they're doing,
Yeah.
to be able to drive well.
But it becomes such a procedural memory kind of task that most of it, like, you're aware, but at the same time, like, you're doing things because it's in your memory.
Parts
Because
of it,
it's
yes.
skill, yeah.
Parts of it, yes. But there's a lot of atypical things that can happen during driving. If you're on a
Unexpected
highway,
things.
yeah, unexpected, yeah. If you're on a highway, and there are only cars there and nothing else, yes, that's right. But if you are in a vibrant neighborhood where you have a lot of things happening,
Yeah, quite
then it
busy.
becomes, yeah, in a busy neighborhood, then it becomes complicated.
Yes.
It's like driving on Granville Street
Oh,
downtown. Or driving downtown.
I am scared of
Driving
driving.
downtown is actually pretty hard because you
is,
have a
yeah.
lot of pedestrians. And that's
Yes.
actually where you want to be.
Okay.
Because there's a lot of things going on. There are cafes there, there are restaurants
So
there.
many things. Yeah,
Yeah.
It's quite alive.
Yeah, it's very, it is a place that you want to be. And driving there is not the easiest way, but if you had options, let's say from here to get there on a train,
Yes.
on an air-conditioned train, would you not take that?
To be honest, sometimes I do prefer, if the distance, the travel distance is gonna be a lot shorter, at least similar to same as driving time, I would choose to take public transportation if it was similar to driving a car.
If it was, how about if it was much better?
Much better in what terms?
Let's say driving would take you, I don't know, 30 minutes, but taking a train would take you 15 minutes.
Yeah, I would definitely take the train. Yeah, I would.
Yeah.
Even though, like, if I have to walk for a minute to the
that's the most
bus
important
stop
thing.
or something.
And unfortunately,
But
in
it's not real.
Vancouver,
Is it realistic? I don't think it can be as realistic.
okay, so it comes back to the question of competition on the space that we have on the road.
So if there was a
Right.
way to
So
lessen-
let me ask you this, and I want you to think about it and answer it.
I like to be challenged.
you have a space,
Yeah.
you have a road,
Mhm.
and you want to allocate space to
Mhm.
different modes.
Yes.
You have the buses
Mhm.
and you have the cars.
And the bikes.
Would you? Let's not make it complicated.
Sure.
Let's not. Let's only focus on these two.
Okay.
Let's say you have 4 lanes. How would you allocate space to each of them? When I say 4 lanes, I mean 2 lanes going one direction, 2 lanes the other direction.
Oh. I guess if it's just 2, then I would just make it shared.
And make it shared.
Yeah, you can't really. 2 is just would feel like it's too little to make it one specific just for car, one specific just for the bus, because probably the number of the cars that'll be coming and going is a lot more. So you can't just make that one for the bus.
But think of it this way, cars are only moving one person or two.
But then you
But
also
you
have
have
to think about
buses.
how much do the buses actually have space, and if it's too busy, people don't want to be taking the bus. It'll be too suffocating in there anyway.
You can, I mean, you okay, so this is a good question. This is an interesting point you're bringing up. The quality of the transportation system.
Yes.
Let's say it is a high quality transportation system.
Okay, so I won't
Public
suffocate in there.
You're not suffocating, and you have buses coming in every 5 minutes.
Okay.
So
Considering
it's a
that,
quite
I can
high
make it a
frequency.
50-50.
You can make it a 50-50.
Considering
I
that,
think that
I
would
can make
be
it a 50-50.
I think that would be fair.
Yeah.
Yeah. But we don't have much of that in
No.
the region. Yeah.
No. Is there
Um,
anywhere that actually does? Like,
I mean, Tehran does. Like
Okay,
the BRT lines.
I came out of there too young to know about the public transport. I was always like dropped off.
You know,
So I don't really.
So there are what we call BRTs,
Yeah, I've heard of those.
bus rapid transit,
Mhm.
and they are buses that have their own dedicated lane.
Mhm.
Lane that should not be shared with that is not shared with any other mode.
Okay.
And we don't really have that in Vancouver.
Mhm.
I mean, we have lanes that have priority for buses on certain hours,
Yes.
but they're not physically separated. I mean, a car
No.
can go there.
Yeah.
Usually, if they want to make a right turn, they
Yeah.
go on
Yeah.
that lane and they stop the bus.
Yeah.
But I would argue that a bus that is carrying 60 people
Mhm.
should be prioritized over a car that is carrying 1 or 2. And that actually makes the
this-
bus more a much better way of getting around, a faster way of getting around. And then you would have more people shifting to the bus and fewer driving, and then congestion is going to come down.
Sorry, how does the congestion come down? Because it shifts.
You
from-
are taking a lane away from cars
Mhm. Oh,
and
so-
giving it to the buses. So the buses are going to get much better in terms of their travel time.
Yes.
And then people who are driving, they'll see the bus going right past them. Like, this is going so quickly. Why am I stuck in traffic? I should just
Yeah.
take the bus.
Yeah.
Right? They can take the bus, and then that's when the equilibrium happens. And also the fact that people will have choices.
Mhm. Yeah, it'll be easier to make that decision
It's
between.
not just driving that is your way of getting around. Let's say you got a flat tire.
Mhm.
You can just take the bus, or you can take your bike, right? You're not
Yes.
bound to your car for getting around. It's
That's
great.
true. Especially like I feel like here there are areas that people live really far away from any kind of public transportation
Mm-hmm.
because it's like on the hills and almost jungles and mountains and whatever. So it's I think the transportation, like in terms of public transportation, is not as good. So yeah, having those options, having more buses or more stops, bus stops or whatever, it can really help.
Buses are actually very expensive. It's hard to
Are they?
run. Yeah,
Oh,
it's hard to run when you're running a bus line.
yeah.
You have a lot of drivers
Mm-hmm.
because every
Changing
bus
shifts and
every bus has one driver.
They
And
do. It's not driving on its own.
yeah, and you have to pay them, so it's very expensive.
Yeah.
And the car itself, the bus is a very
I get it.
expensive
Like, it
vehicle.
becomes quite challenging when you look at the system
Mhm.
where you want to bring quality and quantity at the same time, but you don't have the financial resources, or maybe you're allocating those resources to something else that's like takes priority over that. But at the same time, getting to places could be potentially something like, I don't know, let's say if someone's in an emergency situation or whatever, and and like in those situations, at least I think it becomes really important. Like, so I don't know how they make these decisions, these kind of plannings, like what goes into it, like all the factors.
Yeah.
But yeah, I can see like how multidimensional it can be. Like,
Yes.
it's not just like, well, we want more buses. Why
Yeah.
can't we have them?
We talked about bikes, we talked about buses, we talked about cars. Let's take a step back, talk about transportation itself.
Okay.
It somehow relates to human rights. And I think that you
yes.
should be familiar with it because you work in the health sector,
Yeah.
and we take what's his name?
Ambulance?
No, not ambulance.
I was like, it's
we take healthcare. Healthcare is a human right. Is that right?
well, yeah. Healthcare, yeah. Health on its own.
Yeah, health on its own is a
Yeah.
human right. When did it become a human right?
I don't know. You gotta look at what do they call it? Scriptures? I don't know what they call it. I don't know.
I think it
But
became.
we do have something called determinants of health,
Yeah.
where accessibility and I guess in a way like transportation becomes part of that. Maybe it wasn't initially part of it, but at some point it did become part of like determinants of health, where let's say if you are living in the suburbs and you don't have proper roads or that many transportation vehicles, how will that impact your health? Like, how likely will you go to will you be able to go to a hospital or like to any kind of clinic, like or like what's the closest clinic that you can actually get to using proper transportation?
Yeah. There are a lot of interesting work being done in the field of public health related to transportation. It's one of the things that I love about transportation.
Yeah.
Is that it's multidimensional.
Yeah.
It's when I was studying civil engineering in my bachelor's, most of the work that I did was about structural engineering.
Okay.
Building bridges. Or building
I love that.
or
I love those questions.
yeah, or building just structures, buildings, columns, and
Yeah. I will definitely come back to that because
no,
I do have.
I don't know much
You
about
do.
them.
It
Okay,
sounds like you do.
No, I don't know much about them. My point is these were things that I was not that much interested in because it was pure engineering and not very multidisciplinary. And what I loved about the transportation field inside of civil engineering was that everything is somehow related to it. And yeah, you're making a good point about public health being related to transportation. And there are actually great teams in Vancouver, like in SFU. There's this Professor Megan Winters who's working on public health and cycling.
Public health and cycling. Okay.
Yeah, so that's work that is being done. But to go back to my main question about
health and
about healthcare being a human right, or like education, we take that to be a human right.
Yeah, definitely.
Everyone has to
Deserves
have
to be
a certain level of education. It's mandatory, actually. There are scholars, there are researchers right now that argue transportation is a human right.
Okay, yeah. I mean, I personally believe so. I feel
Because
like it should be.
it's what it's what makes you mobile again. You can get around, you can see your friends, you can be a social person.
Yeah, you can
Uh,
do business, you can you go from point A to
yeah,
point B.
yeah,
Like,
yeah.
yeah, it has a lot of impacts.
Yes,
It
exactly.
makes you a vital individual in your society.
Yes, and you can also measure it. Measure how much transportation
Impacts?
a person has.
Oh, okay.
Uh, we usually call it either mobility or accessibility.
Mm,
Accessibility
agreed.
is much more inclusive because
Yeah.
it tells you how accessible opportunities or services are to you.
Yeah.
If you're only looking at them in terms of, if you're only looking at accessibility in terms of cars and being able to use your car to get around, then not everything is really accessible, because what if you don't have access to a car? Okay.
True.
What if you, as a healthy young person,
Yeah.
after 40 years,
Yeah.
develop some form of disability
Yeah.
and cannot drive?
Yeah. Well,
Then
what
what
am I
happens
supposed to
to
do
you?
then?
Yeah, then what happens to you? Then
Yeah.
then you lose your autonomy. Then you're relying on somebody else to drive you around.
Oh, yeah.
And that really affects your quality of life. So you want to give everyone accessibility using different modes of transportation, and
Considering
that
a lot
is
of situations.
yeah, that is going to that is going to improve their life much more than just making everything accessible by car. Yeah, you want people to be able to walk to their destinations, and for that you have to have sidewalks.
Yes.
You want people to be able to cycle to their destination, or use a scooter
Yeah.
to get to their destination, or a mobility scooter, or a wheelchair to get to their
Yeah.
destination. And for that, you have to have mobility lanes. You also want people to be able to drive to their destinations. So you want to have lanes for cars, and also buses. And buses are amazing
Yeah.
for longer distances, for places where you can't really walk to or bike to. You can take buses or trains or all sorts of different ways of getting around. But you want all of them to be available to a person to have a choice from this great choice set for them to be able to get around, not being bound to driving only.
Oh, yeah. No,
And then
definitely.
you have a society where everyone
It's happy.
everyone is happy and they can easily get around.
So what if someone wants to live on top of a mountain?
Somebody
So
wants
it's your
to.
responsibility to provide everything for him.
If somebody wants to live on the top of the mountain, is that, I guess, I don't want to say government, but is that the society's responsibility to provide opportunities and, like, as you said, modes of transportation for that person who's choosing to live that way?
Okay, so this is very interesting because you are. Okay, now let's go back to the question I made about why don't we have bike lanes everywhere? Because we don't have bike lanes
No.
everywhere. If you look at the map of the roads in Vancouver
Yeah.
and the map of bike lanes
Yes.
or mobility lanes in Vancouver,
Yeah.
you see that there's a lot of mismatch. Like it doesn't cover fully.
Yeah.
There
No.
are a lot of roads that do not have a bike lane.
Bike lane. Yeah.
One of the reasons was the competition.
Mm-hmm.
Another one is that it's expensive.
To build
You
that
have
infrastructure.
exactly
Okay.
building infrastructure is expensive.
Yeah.
And we always have limited funds.
Yeah.
We have limited funds for spending on
Doing
any form
infrastructure,
of
yeah.
on any form of infrastructure,
Yeah.
which makes transportation political.
Yes.
It's a very political topic in engineering.
Mm-hmm.
So you have people
Deciding,
arguing
like, how
and
much.
discussing how they want to use the money, the budget that they have every
Yeah.
year. Okay. And then at the same time, you know that transportation is a human right,
Yeah.
and you want everyone
To
to
have
have
accessibility.
accessibility.
Yes.
That's when we say the conversation becomes normative. You have to have discussions. Society as a whole, everyone's paying taxes.
What do you mean it
They
becomes
have
normative?
it just means that there's no right answer.
I see. Okay.
There are different school of thoughts in terms of how you have a just society or how you have an equitable society.
Yes.
especially when you have limited funds. If you didn't have limited funds, if you had unlimited funds, yes, you would run buses everywhere, right?
As many as you wanted.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You would do crazy things.
Yeah. Beyond imagination.
Yeah. But our funds are limited.
Yes.
And then for
Our
that
space is
person,
limited too.
yes,
So
space is also limited. All our resources are limited.
yeah.
So for a person who decided to go live on top of a mountain,
Yeah.
then that's a discussion. What do you think? Should we?
What do you think?
Should we run a bus specifically for that one person who's living in the mountains?
Mm-hmm.
Or should we just say, that was your decision?
You can either
You
live
just
with
drive.
your society or be excluded.
Yeah, you can just drive. I don't know. So, in terms of making transportation equitable,
Yeah.
I would say eventually what we want to do is make it equitable. We want everyone to have the same level of accessibility to the services, to the opportunities around them.
Yeah, but yeah,
But
considering the limited,
but considering the limitations, we
And I
have to
think
make
depending
prioritization.
on the government that comes, as you said, it's political. So
Yeah.
depending on the policies or whatever, the allocation of the funds would also be an issue.
I would not.
Or priority.
I would not. Sorry.
Or even like their priority.
Yes, I would not put that person living on top of a mountain a priority.
Mm-hmm.
I think you would have to do studies
Yeah.
and look at different neighborhoods
Mm-hmm.
and see how they're doing on certain indices of accessibility. And then regarding that, find problematic places and allocate funds there.
So this is my question. So I don't know about this, but I'm just curious if the municipality for like different cities, do they continuously evaluate how is the transportation in one area? Like, are they evaluating continuously and monitoring it continuously, trying to make those changes, or that's just something that I don't know, they do every couple years, maybe in a year, I don't know, like
Ideally, they're doing it. and equity is more and more becoming the focal point in the work that, let's say, for example, the transportation authority like TransLink does. We don't want. There's this concept of a squeaky wheel. A lot of the times, places that have people who are vocal and who are more powerful, who are more influential on their politicians,
yeah,
they will be the ones that get the funds. Or they say
Yes.
like squeaky wheel gets the oil, right?
Squeaky
So
wheel,
you
yes.
have that, and we don't really want that to be our method of allocating funds in making our transportation system better, because then you would have wealthy neighborhoods and people who are more and more vocal getting all the benefits.
Yeah.
And those neighborhoods or communities that are not as vocal or are lower income or marginalized,
yeah,
they're not getting any of the benefits.
yeah. So
So you want to
it's hard to advocate for yourself, especially if you're coming from, I don't know, from how do I put this? It's hard to advocate for yourself when you're part of different parts of the society. You can't always advocate for yourself. So how is it really like feasible to make it more equitable for everyone? Like it'll be too hard.
I mean, first of all, we would have to know the history. Vancouver itself has a fairly bad history of transportation planning in the past, because at the time that we were hooked on cars and we were building roads and highways everywhere,
Yeah.
the transportation planners, engineers, they were usually people of how should I say, privileged part of the community.
Yeah.
And a lot of the times they put the externalities or the disadvantages of building a road on the burdens on top of communities
Yeah.
that did not have as much power. There's the story of the
Yeah,
Hogan's
that's where it
Alley.
comes. Like if you have more, you can advocate
Yes.
easier and you can get what you want. But
Yes.
then,
There's a story of the Hogan's Alley, which was a thriving community in Vancouver.
Hogan's Alley?
Yes,
Okay.
Hogan's Alley. It would be very interesting to look it up and put it up here for people.
But can you like explain it to me a little, like give a little bit of
Okay,
a
so
overview
so
of Hogan's?
so when we were hooked on cars
Yeah.
and building roads
Mm-hmm.
and making a transportation system where cars could go as fast as possible, as quickly as possible from
Yes.
point A to point B,
Yes.
we had to build highways.
Yes.
And a lot of the times, I mean, highways are very expensive to build.
Yes.
And one of the important things in building highways is that you have to have land to build highways on.
Mm-hmm.
And if you want a highway going through, let's say, downtown Vancouver, you
Yes.
want it to go through an area where land is cheap.
Okay.
And also, I mean, I should also say that there are houses everywhere around downtown.
Yeah.
You want to demolish
Yeah,
houses
you end up
of
doing that.
people who cannot really say no to you.
Yeah, you're kind
Yeah.
of like compensating that for that.
I mean, this is where transportation system becomes oppressive.
Mm-hmm.
In that the transportation planners and engineers of the 90s,
Yeah.
they were building their highways through communities, through marginalized communities,
I see.
because they did not have much of a say in resisting against the construction of that highway.
Do you know
So
any
they
of
would-
the highways that's like that?
There's the Dunsmuir Viaduct, if I'm not wrong.
Dunsmuir Viaduct, okay.
The viaduct that goes into downtown from East Side, from Strathcona.
Okay, yeah, okay.
Yeah, so there's that, like right at the entrance
is, yeah, you're
of
right,
Chinatown.
Yeah.
So there was a whole community that
Mhm.
lived over there
Okay.
and just demolished everything and built the viaduct,
Is that
which was
part of the
supposed to be,
Hogan Alley?
which was supposed to be a highway that went through downtown to Lionsgate Bridge, if I'm not correct. If I'm
So
not
that highway
wrong.
was supposed to go from downtown to Lionsgate.
Yes, I believe.
Oh, okay.
But the story of Hogan's Alley is interesting, where the community was not strong enough
Mm-hmm.
to resist against the construction of that highway, to resist against the demolition of their community.
Yeah, basically.
But there are stories of highways in Toronto that were stopped by communities who had more power than comparatively to the folks who lived in Hogan's Alley.
I think there was another situation here in Vancouver. I don't know how many years ago it was, but I think they wanted to build another C-bus station from West Vancouver to Kitsilano. I don't know if it's exactly Kitsilano or like Jericho or like was it like the Point Grey area, but they wanted to. It seemed quite imperative because Lionsgate Bridge would always be so crazy. Be blocked, especially when things were happening on the bridge. It would have been blocked for hours and hours. So they thought that it would be more imperative to like build that C-bus, but the whole thing was stopped because of I guess the community. Like the community that was in West Vancouver did stop it, even though it was quite. It would have been
The
it would have
community in
made a
West
big
Vancouver is a very
change.
powerful
Yes, it would have made a
community.
very big difference in terms of traffic congestion from like North Shore coming onto downtown. But yeah, it never happened. I don't think it'll ever happen.
That's an interesting project. I would want to see that happen.
Right. I mean, I think I was a student back then, and
And what year is this?
I can't remember exactly. It could have been 2014 or 2015, somewhere around that, but I'm not exactly sure. But I remember like as a student, that was just like such a big deal to me that it was like this would have been so much easier for me cutting down on my travel time from because I used to live on the North Shore coming to UBC. And it would have probably cut it down by a whole hour. And that would have made a big difference.
Yes. So yeah, I mean the connection between the North Shore and Vancouver really needs more ways of getting around. I mean, right now they're buses and they're not that great because they don't have their own dedicated lane. They're stuck in traffic.
Yeah.
They do have a dedicated lane when they're coming to the bridge from North Vancouver, but sometimes cars do go on it.
Yeah,
if you drive there because it's
I've
not
seen that.
physically separated.
I lived there for 9 years.
Being
I've seen it.
being physically separated is very important.
Yeah.
But then again, when they come to the bridge, they are again stuck in traffic. But still, it's very good, much better than driving. But if there are more ways of getting there, let's say, I mean, TransLink has its Transport 2050 plan,
What
and
is
they
that?
want to when they plan for the future
Oh yeah, no,
of
I
the
mean, what is
region,
the plan?
more public ways of getting around is.
Okay.
I mean, you can look at the map that um, uh,
They're hoping to build.
they're hoping to build for the
Yeah.
region, and they should have trains that go there. SkyTrain, if it was
Skytrains.
a SkyTrain, if it went to the North Shore, it would be game changing, right?
So kind of like the SkyTrain that goes from New West to Surrey over the water.
Yes,
Oh wow.
or under the water. I don't know.
Okay, so
I don't know what would be
this
feasible.
would be this is just like irrelevant kind of, but how do they make those subway SkyTrain? I don't know what they call them under the water. I
It
think
is
there's
quite
one in
amazing,
London, if
right?
I'm not wrong. But how do they do that?
It is quite amazing.
How is that possible? How do you
I mean,
do
the
that?
SkyTrain going to downtown from the airport, that goes underwater.
Does it?
Yeah,
Well, I'm not getting in it, but does it?
it goes underwater. Yeah,
So how is that possible?
look at the map.
How do you build the actual tunnel?
It's under Canby Bridge, isn't it? We just dig deep.
How do you stop
There's
the
a tunnel.
water?
There's a tunnel that goes from England to France.
How do you stop the water to build the tunnel? You can't stop the water. How deep do you go?
I do
Where
not
is
know.
the
Okay,
stability?
that's where I mean you have to find the type of soil that has that stability. It
So
cannot
do they
be
go
soft soil.
really? You can't really go all the way.
You would have to
deep.
find rock. You have to go so deep that there's rock, and then you dig a hole in the rock, and build your tunnel.
But it'll be filled with water. How do you like?
I do not know how they do it.
This
Okay,
is-
this is a very interesting question. I mean, if I stayed in structural engineering, I
Yeah.
probably would have known the answer, but I
Yeah.
do not know.
These are like.
Unfortunately, I
crazy.
can't help you here.
No, but I do really want to know if there is one here already. But I
I
always
mean,
find it really
isn't the Massey Tunnel that goes to Delta, that is underwater?
again.
It's
I
under
told you, I
Fraser.
don't
It's
know.
under Fraser River.
Fraser River.
Yeah.
Is it?
I'm checking.
Okay. So we'll just.
It's good that we have someone to fact check.
Yeah,
these.
I would love to
I'm
know.
just not blabbing.
Which, kind of, I had this question kind of like prepared. This is like something that I've always been curious about. I don't know if you can answer.
Parts of Canada Line goes under Falls Creek.
Does it?
Yes.
Oh, wow.
It's amazing that folks can do it.
It's
Engineers can do it.
crazy.
It's not inside the water, it's under that.
Under, I mean, it's a tunnel.
How do you
in-
go under
in
the
rock.
water? How low do you how deep do you have to dig? I feel like it would be really deep.
But we don't have anything in the water.
We don't have anything in the water, right? It's under the water.
Under the water, yeah.
Okay. So do you think
It's
we're ever able
what
to
is it
build
called? I think it's
anything
called
in the
bedrock. It's inside the bedrock of the river.
Okay, that's more clear because saying in the water, it's like inside the water. So
Did I
I'm
say
like,
in the water? I thought I said under the water.
I don't know. Maybe I
Yeah.
heard wrong.
I don't know.
Okay, so that makes a little bit more sense because I'm like, how do you stop the water and build something?
Pump it out. If there's water
Build,
coming in,
dams.
yeah. If there's water coming in, you just pump it out. I don't know. And then stuff something like if there's a whole water is coming in, just stuff
Oh
something.
my
in.
god, I
We do have
absolutely.
those kind of trains in the water.
What? The ones that go into the water?
Yes.
Not under.
No, in the
Into
water.
where?
Yeah.
Where?
Show you here.
It is very.
That's
It should be an
crazy.
interesting view. So I would assume people
that's
do that.
mind-blowing, like how can anything that like moves
Yeah, I'm just fact checking.
and there's
Yeah.
people
You
in
should-
it
you should
goes
bring
into
up-
the water.
You should bring up the map of the tunnel between England, like UK, and France.
So I've always been like really curious about how do they build those pillars for because you said you did your bachelor's degree in structural civil engineering.
It was like in general civil engineering.
Okay, so
And I took some courses in structural.
you might know
but-
kind of about this. So I've always
I-
been really curious, like how do
I don't think I know more than an average person. But what is the question?
Let me get to the question. So how do they build the pillars for the bridges, or we call them? I think I read that somebody they call them piers in the water, like how the like suspension bridges like between the two. I don't know, point A from to point B, and it goes over the water. So how do they actually put those pillars in the water? Because they're massive, they're humongous.
Yeah,
And I am scared of them. Like, how?
I don't know. I'm assuming. Okay, this is a very probably wrong assumption, but we'll see. You can fact check later and say tick if I was remotely right, and then a cross if I was not, an X if I was not. I'm assuming there's a shell that goes in. And then they pour concrete, and the concrete is probably heavier than water, and then concrete goes in and water comes out. I'm not sure.
Does that happen? If concrete goes in water, water comes out?
If it is heavier than water, it is heavier than water.
7 times heavier.
So,
7 times
wait,
heavier.
concrete is heavier than water. So, water would just come out?
Yeah. I mean, think of it this way. Okay,
Okay, so
Let's
where would
say you have
they
a-
have to go as deep as where they can stabilize those pillars in some sort of a
I
ground?
think you have piles that you drive into the ground. What are they called? I think they're piling companies. They
Piling.
specialize in driving a pile into the ground.
So, what is a pile?
It's probably like a metal rod or something.
Oh, like, okay.
That goes
In,
into
okay.
the ground.
Weighs 2.4 times water, as much as water.
2.5.
Okay, 2.5, okay. 2.5
I mean, but I
heavier
mean,
than
the
water.
point is, if you're pouring it into the water, if into a river that is moving, it is going to get diluted. So it has to be a special kind of concrete.
Or like somehow surrounded by
as-
something that
okay.
more water doesn't go in it. I don't
I'm
know.
imagining like someone who's an expert in this watching this. I mean, like,
If you are an expert, please somebody explain this to me. I have been having this question forever and I need an answer. Like,
put it down in the comments.
yeah, I cannot comprehend how this is possible. I can't. It's like I don't know. It's like a math.
They're changing the water path.
They're changing the water.
Oh, yeah, I mean, for dams, I think that's what they do,
Yeah, but
right?
for example, Lionsgate Bridge goes over an ocean.
No, not for that one.
Exactly. So I'm considering something as huge as that, which is kind of crazy.
So the short answer is, I don't know.
I don't know either. I was hoping you would.
I do not know.
Do the research for the next time.
I'll do my research. I'll come prepared next time.
No, that's all right. I
We'll
mean,
start with a
This
crash
is
course on how you build
a
a
bridge.
bridge.
yes, in water. I mean, over the water.
Yeah. You basically make what did you say they called? Piles?
Piers?
Piers?
Yeah.
Piers.
Basically, they're columns.
Yeah, exactly. They're columns.
And
I think-
piers aren't piers different? Like the White Rock Pier, the one the platform that goes into the water. It's called a pier.
Yeah, that's pier as well, but I don't know. I just read this somewhere that I kind of searched for pillars, like bridge pillars, and they said they're commonly called pier,
Oh, okay.
which are columns that, yeah, the bridge stands on it basically, in a way.
Yeah.
Yeah, but that's crazy.
I know. Okay, so yeah, by now I know very little about structural engineering.
So we had a really like delightful, informative, and all in one package kind of conversation so far. I have more questions, so I'm hoping we can like later on talk about the more questions that I have about transportation, just the field itself later on. But for now, we just kind of have to wrap it up, if that's okay with you.
That's great. Yeah.
Okay, well,
Thank you. Thank
thanks
you
for
for having
coming
me.
on the podcast. I really appreciate everything, and I'm glad again you're feeling better.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
Yeah, so we might talk about my questions afterwards, but this will be it for today. And thanks everyone for listening and watching.